So let's speak to Sir Michael Fabricant, the Conservative MP of Lichfield. Hello, Michael. Well, this is... I mean, I read about this and I thought it would be some conspiracy to get all the doctors and everybody else to go along with this. But then you find people like Gary Lineker and Chris Bryant, MP, of course, Privileges Committee. What do you make of this?
Well, you know, they're Remainers who just can't get over the fact that the British public voted to leave in 2016. My God, it sounds like 1916 by the way people carry on. And they just can't get over it. And they're convinced that there was always this grand conspiracy. You know, just 2 days after Boris Johnson left intensive care, he tweeted, this is Mr. Ball, the guy who made this so-called documentary, quote, "The PR timing is just too perfect. I fear that he being Boris Johnson, may be dodging responsibility by becoming a victim." I mean, the guy was in hospital in intensive care, almost knocked out to have a ventilator fitted. That didn't have to happen in the end. And that's what, you know, these arch conspiracists come up with. And more fool Chris Bryant and Gary Lineker having anything to do with them.
Well, of course, they both deny that they knew that this was the sort of idea of it was some sort of thing against Boris. But the fact that they got involved in this, do you think this sort of brings back the idea that actually people who work for the BBC in such a high-profile manner shouldn't be commenting on politics? And I don't understand why Gary Lineker managed to evade and continues to the BBC guidelines.
Well, you know, you do have this inbuilt prejudice, don't you, in the BBC? We've just seen it with the apology they've had to give to Nigel Farage. They immediately assume that NatWest are completely right and that Nigel Farage was completely wrong. And now the BBC have had to apologise and say, yeah, well, actually, we got it wrong and Nigel Farage was right. It's this predetermined position that many journalists and so-called trendies in central London like to take, that the rest of the country got it wrong over Brexit and that everybody else is involved in a conspiracy, but not them.
And, of course, Simon Jack, who was the business editor who tweeted out as well from the BBC again with regard to Nigel Farage and his account, and he had a source, but he came out with that after having some sort of swanky meal with Dame Alison Rose. It just doesn't look good for the corporation.
It's a bit of a coincidence. Well, I've actually got a huge amount of respect for Simon Jack. The poor man was duped and he fell for it, hook, line and sinker. So I think we should say to Alison Rose on GB News, were you the one who said to Simon Jack that it was Nigel Farage's finances and not NatWest's prejudices, because it's NatWest, don't forget, who own Coutts, and not NatWest's prejudices that actually got the bank account of Nigel Farage closed? Come on, Simon, it might... I know as a journalist, you're not going to say who it was. Alison Jones, Alison Rose, are you going to deny it was you?
Well, it's a breach of GDPR, surely. You can't be giving out information about clients. And of all things, the people, as Jacob said earlier, the people that you don't want to speak are, of course, your bank. You don't want them to talk about your finances. It's always good to talk to you, Michael. Thank you very much for joining me. That is Michael Fabricant,
Thank you.
MP for Lichfield.